shots, 6 on target. Jeez. The Loons had 9 shots total with only 2 on target. So
again, it's missed opportunities.
Again, missed opportunities.
Yeah. And we saw it several times with the Crew just kind of running through us.
Yeah.
There was one play early on, I think it was after the break, where, in fact, it might have even resulted in a goal. Where they just kind of ran through the midfield, and here Colin Martin is just kind of jogging along.
He's jogging,
and it forced Miguel into playing defense because Eric Miller was pushed far up. You pointed out that everybody was pushed so far up.
Yeah,
and Colin Martin is just kind of walking through the midfield. Everybody's passing him.
Yep, and
here Miguel is charging 100% like he always is.
Yep,
and he's having to play defense, and that's completely inappropriate.
Well. And again, we talked about this before on this podcast, the fact that the defense, it seems like they get guys behind so many times. It amazes me how many times we get guys behind the defense and just break away, and nobody's watching out. And nobody's watching at all. I mean, and we'll talk about this in the second half of this pod, the fact that going into next season, we need to get better defenders. We're going to need to pick it up, either trades or signings or whatever. We need better defenders on this team. I
agree. And, I'm going through Twitter to see if I can find anything about Angelo.
Nothing.
And I can't find anything.
Yeah.
So,
well, we'll certainly be able to have an update in our next pod, of course.
Yeah,
maybe by then.
We should know by then.
I mean, it's not like they don't have to rule them out for the next game. There's no injury reports now, so the information might not come out as quick as it normally would, but certainly you'd think we'd know in a week or two.
So, you guys have nothing else about the game we watched today?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I think that's basically a wrap on the 2018 United season.
So, we're going to go on a break right now. We're going to get another beer. We'll come out of the break. I think we'll talk about briefly what we saw this season. We have some comments on an article about Liga and MLS
maybe
joining forces potentially.
There's not a plan in place for that. We can talk about it more.
I think we should talk about what the implications would be if that happened.
Right.
And then a little bit about what we should be looking for in the offseason for this team. I mean, what we need to upgrade. I mean, we talked about the defense, and I think we're going to talk about defense a lot in the offseason. So we're back in a little bit. We'll grab some beers, and we'll see you in a couple minutes.
All right.
We are back, everybody. We are recording this at OMNI Brewing in Maple Grove. You can find us on the BGN network, bgn.fm. Also on Facebook. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
LoonacyPodcast.com.
LoonacyPodcast.com. It's our website name.
iTunes.
iHeartRadio.
SoundCloud.
Pretty much everywhere.
Spreaker.
Yeah.
Did you mention Insta yet?
I mentioned Instagram, yeah. So we're at OMNI in Maple Grove. In the beginning, I did talk about the fact that Dave Sterling and I, our first brewery podcast was from this exact location.
Yep.
When we were didn't really know what we were going to do with the podcast, and after that, it's all kind of exploded.
Yeah.
We've been having a good time. So we thought it'd be appropriate to watch the final game of this year here and do the final podcast of the season here.
Right.
we will be doing podcasts in the off season. We're not going to stop doing it because I know all of you want to listen to our voices all year long. I know you can't go without us for more than 2 weeks. I know 2 weeks is a long time for some of these people to listen.
Yeah.
They get a little antsy,
It is a long time. We should really think about doing this every week during the
Yeah, we
off-season.
should.
We talk about random things.
We talked about it. Maybe at some point we will. But we're going to do it in the off-season. We will talk, of course, about soccer in the off-season. For the next couple podcasts, we'll be talking about the MLS playoffs.
Yep.
What's going on there. And then when those are done, we'll be talking a little bit, I think, about off-season moves, teams that are doing things, especially United, what they're doing. And maybe
not doing.
And or not doing. Exactly right. Manny Lagos, what's he not doing? Yeah. He'll probably go on vacation for a long time and won't do shit.
Yeah. And we can touch on soccer across the globe. Maybe do a little across the pond. Talk about the Premier League.
Of course, we can do that. And then I think most of our podcast in the off-season will be off-season stuff, plus just some random stuff. Beer talk, maybe some other sports talk, maybe some just random things we see going on in the world,
Yeah.
Because really we're only done with the United for 4 months.
Yeah.
And then we're back on again. So, bear with us through the off-season, but we'll be back talking about United real games back in next March.
Yeah. And we'll be talking about more beer.
Yeah, we'll talk about more, of course. Yeah. Before we get started, I do want to give a shout-out to our fangirl who is at the Dual Citizen podcast, and we call her fangirl. I should have said fan woman because she is a woman. She was drinking. She did make a comment on our iTunes page.
And gave us 5 stars.
And gave us 5 stars. So if you want to get back to us, you can be, your name can be, moniker can be number 1 fangirl, number 1 Loonacy fangirl, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Number 1 Loonacy fan woman.
And whenever we get stickers or something,
you can have one of those.
You can be the first one to have a sticker.
We do T-shirts. You can have a T-shirt too.
Yeah.
Do that. But thank you for coming out last weekend, even though you didn't know what was going on. Thank you for being there, and it was nice to have somebody who's not a friend or a family member say they listen to our podcast.
Yeah, and we had a few people, or we had one other person that night.
We did.
And it's cool to see, at first I was a little skeptical about exactly how serious her and the guy that she was with were about listening to us.
Yeah.
But the 5-star review is fantastic.
Quickly back in the back in history, a long time ago in a land far, far away, I did a sketch comedy show out of Minneapolis on Minneapolis Public Access, and I swear that only people who watched it were people who lived in Minneapolis, who were my friends or my family, which wasn't very many at that time. And we've been doing it for about a year, and then somebody came up to us in the street when we were doing it and said, "Hey, I watch you guys." And it was like the coolest / weirdest feeling ever, because I always thought, nobody watches this sketch comedy crap on Minneapolis Public Access.
Sure.
Why would you?
So did it make you kind of feel weird going forward after you heard that?
Now I was like, I'm actually doing a sketch comedy for somebody who actually watches us.
You're not.
That's the same way. Now I'm doing a podcast for somebody who actually listens to, not a friend or family member.
Right.
So I have to be more professional.
Or not. But, I think I agree with you. It kind of adds so we're actually, someone's actually listening to us.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I look at the stats every week, and I see where obviously people are downloading our podcast, but still to actually know for a fact that someone is listening is kind of interesting.
It's a weird / good feeling,
right? Because the fact is, I don't want to listen to me.
Yeah,
I have to listen to me when I do my editing.
You have to. Yeah.
I mean, it's just it's kind of interesting.
It is.
And speaking of which, when I was at Best Buy today, and I was trying to find a tripod and a phone mount for kind of recording us video-wise sometimes. I was talking to the lady that was there. She was helping me, though I didn't really need a lot of help with a tripod. But I was trying to explain to her what we were doing, and again, she was an older woman who maybe isn't down with podcasts, and she was asking because she didn't understand why anyone would take the time to listen to us talk about soccer and beer.
Why wouldn't you?
When she asked, I was like, well, I mean, I guess I don't know.
Yeah.
Apparently we say things that are at least slightly interesting.
Well, I think we're slightly interesting.
Well, I mean, the thing is, you got to find what you like. I mean, how many thousands, tens of thousands podcasts are there out there? You just need to find one that you like, and it's a great way to pass the time on your commute or when you're at work if you have that opportunity. And if you like soccer and you like beer, then you probably like this podcast.
But I told you guys this before. It's not about getting listeners from me. That's a cool thing to do.
Right.
For me, it's just fun.
Yep.
Getting out on a Sunday, drinking some good craft beers from Minnesota, and talking about soccer and other stuff that comes up. Yeah. I mean, that's just a good time to me. You know?
Yeah. And speaking of beer, what are you having coming out of the break, Tony?
Well, I'm actually doing the what do they call it? The Soak 2018, which is their fresh hop ale.
Okay, yeah, actually, I had that as part of my flight, and the one that I had, the second beer that I had, the first one out of my flight was the Fad, or it's short for freaking awesome and delicious, and it's a New England double IPA, and it's pretty good. In fact, one of my ex-coworkers who is a listener of this pod, and he's actually a big fan of Omni. And when I told him we were going to come here and record, he specifically mentioned that Fad, and you got to try it. So yeah, I love it. It was a great.
And Sterling is doing the Hugs.
No,
what is that one?
I'm not. I actually went non-alcoholic.
What?
And I'm doing the kombucha.
Oh, that's right. They have kombucha here.
And it's ginger, raspberry ginger.
Nice.
And it's. I mean, I like kombucha.
It's healthy.
What is kombucha? Is it
So it's a fermented tea.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's still non-alcoholic. It's like 1%, maybe 1.5%.
Yeah.
So they just literally put. I mean, it sounds terrible, but it's literally just bacteria that's cultured, and it ferments the tea underneath it.
Yes.
And they add flavor. They infuse different flavors in it.
So we're not only a soccer and beer podcast, we're now a kombucha podcast.
Right.
So we got that going for us. So let's get into what we thought of the season. Just briefly, guys, because next podcast in 2 weeks, we're going to have some awards we're going to give out to United players, best, of course, MVP, LVP, I think, least valuable player, which is easy. I mean, I'm not going to give it away, but I think there's one name that we're going to give to that one.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be too shocking.
Yeah. Probably best goal.
But maybe Dave's going to try to hijack that one. Maybe he's got somebody different.
Well, I'm probably voting for these awards, and I'll certainly put my vote in, and I don't know that would be my vote. But
there's only one guy who fits in that category. We're not going to say his name, but
we don't want. Okay,
we don't want to spoil it. We'll spoil it. MVP, LVP, probably best goal. Some other things we're going to come up with in the next couple weeks here. But I just want to, and we'll talk about the season a bit more in 2 weeks, but I just want to briefly, from each of you guys, get what you guys thought of the season. And we're going to start with Dave Stevens first.
Okay, and I would say in a couple words, I mean, it's got to be a bit frustrating. Frustrating would be the best adjective I could think of, and because in a broken record kind of way, because it just seems like we sit here and we talk about the same problems week after week, and early on in the season maybe you can understand it with some new personnel and new but you just can't describe it. The problem is there was just not enough improvement, I would say. You only saw flashes of brilliance or flashes, moments where you thought to yourself, wow, this team's special, they're improving, they're doing something right. But you didn't see enough. There was not enough improvement over the course of the season. So, I mean, yes, they had a fairly decent home record, but the away record was awful and just frustrating. Frustrating, broken record, not enough improvement. I don't know. That's my thoughts.
All right.
Throughout the whole season, I guess, I'm always optimistic. You guys know that. I guess I guess the best part of the season was as the season went on. I think that you can see the build up. You can see that the attendance was great the entire year. There was a lot of support for this team, and